pitch competition. We're going to just get underway in just a second. I want to just thank everybody for being here. For those of you who don't know, my name is Josh Mandel, just to let you know who I am. I come from Halcyon Social Enterprise Incubator in Washington, D.C. I see some of our fellows in the back, thank you. And I'll be your MC for today. Just to kind of give you an idea, for those of you who don't know about GIST, it's the Global Innovation Through Science and Technology program. This is the State Department's flagship startup program that focuses on science and technology startups. It empowers young innovators to build startups through networking, through skills, through mentoring, and of course access to finance. The GIST Catalyst Pitch Competition looks at some of the top emerging startups from around the world, and we're here at the GES to give them a global stage to share with the kinds of businesses that they're looking to create. There's GIST opportunities for all of you. If you need to learn more, please visit gistnetwork.org. That's G-I-S-T network.org. So during the GES, we're going to be hearing 24 pitches, 6 companies from each of the 4 pillars, which you see kindly marked on the pillars next to you. Today, we are going to be hearing from companies all in the digital economy and fintech sectors. There are 6 companies that are going to be pitching, and I'm really looking forward to introducing them all. But first, you cannot have a great pitch competition without a great panel of judges. And of course, we have that in spades today. So first, let me just introduce you to our esteemed panel of judges. First, we have Elizabeth Gore, who is the entrepreneur in residence at Dell, chairman of the board of Alice. Doug DeVos, who's the president of Amway. Rajan Anandan, Google's vice president for Southeast Asia and India. Kamuda Govindarajulu, not bad, right? Director of the Innovation Group at Cognizant here in India. And finally, Bikram Bedi, Amazon's head of the India region. So let's give a round of applause for our judges. Excellent, and let's go ahead and get things started because we have 55 minutes to do 6 pitches and everything's going to run on clockwork, of course. Just so you know, each panelist is going to have 3 minutes to give their pitch, and then there will be 5 minutes of Q&A just from the judges. At the conclusion, the judges will have a few minutes to deliberate, and we will announce the winner from the fintech and digital economy sector right here before the session ends, and hopefully before 11:30. So with that, let me introduce our first startup, who is Roger Zoundi from Scoring Card from Burkina Faso. Roger, welcome to the stage. Good luck. Can I use one of your microphones? Check, check. There you go, sir.
I'm Roger Zoundi, data-driven entrepreneur and co-founder of Scoring Card LLC. Today, there is a financial inclusion problem. Women from India and sub-Saharan Africa don't have access to credit capital. We are building a P2P lending platform combined to online payment systems and electronic payment infrastructure to let women access to loans with a rate of 4% interest rate. Our value proposition is allowing women to have access to a loan with $0% of fees, $0% of cost, and $0% of penalties. It's also allowing global lenders to ensure repayment of their loans by making restriction to borrowers to use the loans only on online payment system and on electronic payment systems. We our target market is more than 300 women from India and sub-Saharan Africa. Our target market is more than 300 women from sub-Saharan Africa and India. We get paid from these women by by asking them 2% of the interest rate. Dear judge member, by letting access Scoring Card LLC to final stage this competition, you give yourself opportunity to become a global lender. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. We can now take some questions from the judges.
Yeah, hi. First of all, congratulations. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the traction you're having, how many loans you've given out, and any data you have in terms of NPAs, how many of the loans have been paid back? Give us some sense of total transaction. So you've launched, right? You've launched the business already.
Right.
Give us some sense of like the actual performance of the business, so we get a sense of how your cost of acquisition, the loans given out, the NPAs. Give us some financial metrics that will give us some sense of how you're doing.
We ask for investment of $50,000, and with this investment, we're going to launch Scoring Card in India and connect 10,000 women to global lenders. And by borrowing just $5,000 to every woman, we are going to make return investment of $2 million.
There's two out there? Okay, great.
With 4% interest rate. So our venture is scalable in this way.
Sorry, no. Have you launched in Africa already?
Yeah, we begin in the last 4 months. We made more than $200 by selling credit reports. Yeah.
Roger, good job. I know this is really hard, and I'm very proud of you. So
Thank you.
Stefan is doing a good pitch. What is it? How are you scaling digitally? So you were saying you wanted to go from Africa to India and so on. What kind of digital platform are you using to scale?
So we are building Scoring Card.bf. That is a peer-to-peer lending platform connected to an online payment system, an electronic payment system. So by this way, we are going to connect women who need to borrow money to investors and individuals who are going to become a global lender. So it's from the peer-to-peer lending platform, the most value proposition is to be combined to online payment terminals. In this way, we are going to ensure repayment because the loan will be used only with the online system. So the lenders will be repaid by percentage of every transaction. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Help me understand how you're differentiating yourself from others who are operating in this space. Why are you different? Why are you special? Why, what value are you bringing to your customers in this way? Help me understand the difference from people who are already doing this work where it's been started.
P2P lending is not new venture. There are already some P2P lending platform, but our innovation is to combine this P2P lending platform to payment terminals and to online payment platforms. So in this way, we are going to ensure repayment, because the more challenge for P2P lending venture is to ensure the repayment. P2P lending venture has a huge potential to be global. By getting to ensure the repayment, so we are going to make it more global. That is why we're asking for investment to launch it in India and connect India women and sub-African women that we estimate for 300 million women to the US investors. So our most innovation is to introduce the online payment system. So for example, a woman who gets our loan will not receive a cash, but a credit card. With the credit card, she's going to make her investment only by paying, for example, equipments online and selling her product, for example, Shibuto, with payment terminals. And the lender will get repaid by percentage of transaction. So if the woman when the woman sells $1,000, the lender will automatically receive a percentage of this transaction. So that is going on until the lender gets repaid. So that is how we are different.
Roger, thank you very much. We're out of time, I'm afraid. Now let me go ahead and introduce Meredith Peng from Humanitry from the United States. Turn hers up a little.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Meredith, and I'm going to be pitching about Humanitry. So let's start off with this. In Indonesia, 4 children every minute drop out of school. By the end of this pitch, if I'm on time, that's going to be 12 kids. By the end of this summit, that's over 17,000 children in Indonesia alone. Furthermore, in 2016, 2.5 million children could not advance from elementary school to middle school due to financial constraints, access to education, etc. These issues are worldwide, so that number could easily be in the tens of millions. And in addition, these issues oftentimes disproportionately affect girls over boys. So let's say you're a Good Samaritan, which I hope you guys are, and you want to help sponsor a child through education. But how do you know that your money is being safely and securely transacted? How do you know that the organization you're going to be sponsoring to is trustworthy and effective? And how do you know where your impact is going? Introducing Humanitry. Humanitry is going to be a mobile-based app solution, iOS and Android, that will attempt to tackle these issues. Through your smartphone, you will be able to see verified and trusted organizations, select through a child through filters such as gender, age, and a child's dreams, see updates regularly from your child, write letters to your child directly, and also see where your impact is going through a user dashboard and social media integration. Through Humanitry, we want to make it as easy to sponsor a child as subscribing to Netflix. After all, the cost is exactly the same. So let's talk about market. We're going to be targeting the Indonesian diaspora market, which is 8 million strong, as well as existing child sponsors, which are already experiencing the pain points listed above. There's already traction in this market. $3.29 billion has already been transacted through traditional child sponsorship means. And we're going to make that number grow. And after we succeed in Indonesia, we're going to be taking this worldwide and scaling it to places like India, the Philippines, and Mexico, where child sponsorship issues and access to education is an issue, and where the diaspora community is large. So we're already hustling and moving forward with Humanitry. We've secured one partnership already with a very successful one-to-one child sponsorship organization in Indonesia, and we've already validated the demand for our solution. We're also going to be charging a leads generation fee, so for each lead generated through Humanitry, we'll be charging a fee, as well as for premium services and support. Our team is 4 dedicated individuals who have the right experience and skills to keep moving this forward. We are people who have ranged from social impact to the child sponsorship space, and we really believe that this thing is going to work. We are still early stage, so that means we have been working off of sweat equity, but we would like to request $100,000 in either investment or grants to help keep moving this forward in terms of technical development, in terms of marketing research, and helping get the right help to the people who need it the most. So if anyone has any idea of how to get that money, please let me know. We can talk in the back. We already have everything in place, a partnership, a prototype, and an existing user database that we will be using to be our first batch of users. We just need that money to keep moving forward. So I really think that together we can improve access to education around the world systematically, and especially when it comes to girls. So we're going to make this as easy as subscribing to Netflix. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Meredith. We're now going to take some questions from the judges.
First, hey, good job firstly. Thank you. The idea is brilliant in terms of not only helping out society but also making money. My question really would be scale. So what are you looking at over the next 3 years? How do you plan to scale this? What kind of numbers are you looking at? What is it you're looking at in terms of which countries do you target first? Are you just going global?
So to clarify, you're asking about revenue as well as which countries?
Revenue, countries, number of children.
Okay, so right now, the organization we're partnering with already has 2,000 kids and 1,000 sponsors. We're looking at Indonesia first, and once we establish a base all over Indonesia, because the market is already super huge in Indonesia, we're going to be moving forward to maybe other countries, maybe India or the Philippines, where there's already existing child sponsorship infrastructure in place. In terms of revenue, we're going to be looking at maybe a 2% fee for each lead generated, which is pretty small considering how only 80% currently goes towards children in the child sponsorship space already, meaning that 20% of all donations are going towards like marketing and like sales offline. So this is pretty valuable for those child sponsorship organizations. So we think that we have a lead there. And over 3 years, it should be around $7 to $10 million if all goes well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
Who are your competitors and whom you think that would disrupt your product?
Yeah, so actually we are the first people going for this solution at this angle. We're not competing with existing child sponsorship organizations because we want to work with them instead to create, a better environment for child sponsorship. So currently people are doing child sponsorship through very traditional means, through offline, paper, etc. We want to be the first ones, and we are going to be the first ones to be taking this completely digital and really, streamlining the process. So we are the only ones in the field.
Okay, so you mean to say you don't have any competitors in the market?
Yeah, unless, of course, like a child sponsorship organization hears about it and decides, yeah, we are going to do this too. But we think that we have enough kind of, expertise and knowledge. Like one of our founders has been running a child sponsorship organization for 10 years. She knows the market. She knows what to do. Another one has co-founded the largest social enterprise in Indonesia. So through these partnerships and that network, we think that we can, really pull at what it is in Indonesia.
I was going to ask if you've targeted, first of all, Meredith, great job being here again. Have you targeted, education is very, very broad, have you targeted in certain markets, certain segments? Are you talking more primary, secondary, higher level? Have you targeted or thought about that? And then are you connecting it to results or following these students to their next levels of achievement?
So are you talking about the students or the market for users?
I'm talking about the students.
Okay, so for students, we're thinking generally it's going to be elementary school to high school. Usually when child sponsorship is ideal, you have someone who sponsors a child throughout their entire education. That way you can see the growth happen. And oftentimes, people who sponsor children like to start from elementary school in order to see that growth. So we will likely be working more with the younger kids and hopefully seeing a continued sustainable kind of sponsorship throughout their high school years. Mm-hmm.
I'll just close with a really good job on presenting data on your access to capital needs. I have a lot of thoughts for you if you want to meet up after. And then I think your 2% affiliate fee is fine to your question. So
awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, judges. And let's give a big hand for Meredith. Now next, let's welcome Janesh Sinha from Gyandan from India.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Janesh Sinha. I am one of the founders of Gyandan. We are India's first education loan marketplace. We focused on the Indian study abroad market with seasonal annual spend of $15 billion. Now, the problem is huge. While 46% of the higher education spend in the US is financed through education loans, that number for India is just 5%, despite the low income levels. There are two reasons for limited lending. First, lenders find it tough to estimate students' future income, and therefore they base education loan underwriting on parental income and collateral. We are solving for that by building a model that predicts students' future income. This model has been validated by 2 of our institutional lending partners already. The second problem is that cross-border movement of the students increases lenders' concerns around willful default simply because defaults in one country won't even affect the credit scores in the other. To solve for this, we have devised a unique two-country lending structure that we'll be soon launching. To students, we offer seamless products, great customer service, and all of this at no cost to them. We have had a great response so far, with over $24 million in student loans originated in just 17 months since our inception. We get these students through in-person sessions, through DIY tools that we have developed, and through content that we have published. We have absolutely no marketing spend. Now, through our partners, we earn an upfront commission, and we are working to add an ongoing carry to our revenue model as well. Our current customer acquisition cost is around $80, and we earn unit revenue of $400 per customer. We'll be able to increase the unit revenue to $1,500 through student loans alone, and to $3,500 including cross-sell. Before starting Gyandhan, my co-founder and I, we spent 5+ years shaping credit strategies at Capital One, which is one of the top banks in the US. We have Sundaram Finance, a major financial services group in India, as one of our investors. And we are currently seeking $3.5 million in financing to expand our current setup and to also establish a US lending arm. Now, this US lending arm is critical because it will allow us to roll out the two-country credit structure that I talked about. And it will also position us favorably to do cross-sells and service future financing needs of these students who, as new-to-credit borrowers in the US, are often underserved. Now, I went through financial hurdles myself during my higher education. I was fortunate. I was actually helped by a philanthropic initiative called Super 30. And through Gyandhan, I want to be able to do the same to others like me. I thank you, and I'm now open for questions.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, and congratulations. What great traction.
Thank you.
You should have been around when I had to go to college. It would have been very helpful
Instead
of paying MIT over 15 years. Can you talk a little bit about the credit model itself? I mean, how do you, you kind of briefly spoke about that, right?
Yeah.
Is it your proprietary credit model?
Yes.
And then can you talk a little bit about what are the signals that you're using?
Yes.
How does that compare with, let's say, other credit models?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll differentiate between what we have is a student income prediction model. And then we integrate that through businesses and lenders' own risk parameters to create a credit model. Our expertise in the student prediction business, right? Student prediction modeling. In that model, we use our key focus market right now is Indian students going to the US and to Canada for their masters in engineering. So we use undergraduate variables like college, branch, their GRE score, their other standardized test scores, their college performance, their work experience. These form parameters. This is our own proprietary model. We spent 2.5 years gathering data from all the public sources, including Department of Labor's website, which publishes data on salary by location. And we've gathered all of it together, and I have background data science myself, and we use this to create the model.
Elizabeth?
Ultimately, I'm curious if you're going towards an acquisition.
Sorry, Elizabeth, I cannot hear you.
I don't know if you're ultimately going towards acquisition to sell your company, but I would definitely check out what SoFi, S-O-F-I, is doing, because I could see them ultimately acquiring what you've built and or helping you expand. So just a thought.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And we actually view SoFi as an idol, because what they've done, moving from just student financing and to tapping that student borrower and following and serving their follow-on financing needs, that's exactly what we want to do. Because student loans is the first step in somebody's career. And if you can catch those high earning, not rich yet customers early, then you have a great customer pool, and you don't only just build a great business, you also help these high potential individuals excel in their own lives and touch other lives as well.
Yeah, Yeah, I had a question.
Yes, Vikram.
$3.5 million.
Right, sir.
Right. What are you going to do with it? Where are you planning to put it? How do you scale? Talk about that.
So the biggest expense is going to be involved in setting up the US lending entity. Now, I can't stress the importance of the US lending entity because this arm will enable us to launch the two-country credit reporting structure. To every lender that we talk to in India, the biggest risk that they saw was the guy is going to a different country entirely. What if he doesn't pay back the money willfully? What do I do now? This will help solve for it because their US credit score will be affected even with Indian defaults. We have vetted this structure through lawyers, by talking to credit bureaus in the US, and we now need to bring this to fruition to life. And the biggest expense is going to be $1 million will be set aside towards raising debt as to use as the equity part to raise debt for doing our part of loans because we cannot report to US credit bureaus unless we are involved at least partially in lending. So we want to take a small chunk, 5% of every loan that we do. Secondly, we'll use some money in around $500,000 to set up US operations to get lending licenses. Now, we want to be smart about this. We want to start off with just 4 states. US has 50 states. Every state has its own lending license regulations. We don't want to go there. We just want to start with 4 states, establish a proof of concept, feel good ourselves, and then expand from there. So those are the big expenses, Vikram.
Jainesh, congrats, and
Thank you.
good to see you here. One I see is a big boon to the student community. One is the market loan, the education loan. The second one is the employment that we're looking at, predicting the employment.
Yes.
So where do you see the market heading? Do you see any shifts you expect in the future?
In terms of
the market shifts.
So in terms of the market shift in the higher education lending space, what we see is that education lending, if you look at the trend in India, was not even a thing till 2000s, very rare. Through government's push and IBA's push, at least the domestic education was financed. Still, the lending has remained limited to a very limited set of colleges. Only 1,200 colleges in India are financed through PSUs. There are 45,000 colleges in India, 4,500 engineering colleges in India, and 30,000 universities in India. We want to be able to expand this, and that's where I see the market heading. The market is heading with the advent of more information. I see the market heading in the direction where students' own potential is being used for underwriting rather than parents' income. And we go deep and granular, and we're able to support even students going to tier 2, tier 3 colleges. And we find the gems in those colleges and we fund them.
Great. Thank you very much, Jainesh. Great job. Let's give him a hand.
Thank you, everyone.
I'd like to welcome up to the stage Evelyn Shalomo of Lupia Circle from Zambia.
Good morning. My name is Evelyn Kaingo, and I'm the founder of Lupia. In my country, Zambia, many women micro-entrepreneurs do not have access to formal financial services. They cannot obtain financial facilities to progress economically because they do not have collateral. They live in remote locations where they are not on the grid or cannot meet requirements that are subjective to a financial return for traditional financiers to prepare a financing package for them. So across Africa, traditional lenders have struggled to penetrate communities and provide financial packages for these communities. So what we are doing is developing a platform that will use a branchless service to provide financial services through mobile devices in communities, through our information systems and a network of market agents. So when we started our company, our goal was to create and develop a low-cost model that was able to target 5 million women who do not have access to financial packages. So what we have done in the past last year is mobilize money from lenders in a category we have classified as micro-investors, where we let people give us money up to $10,000 for a short period of time for an end interest. So we make money off the interest and a lower interest that we give back for our investments. So we are using the internet. to give women who are registered with centralized warehouse receipts who use high-grain warehouse tradable receipts to give us as collateral to get money on our platforms. So when we use technology, we streamline our processes. When we use technology, we're able to offer a branchless service and operate a low-cost model, and at the end of the day, we can give affordable loans and we can target a wider demographic that most traditional lenders will not target. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Let's open up the floor to judges for questions. Elizabeth?
Wonderful job. It was great.
Thank you.
So Zambia mobile banking is just incredible. And I was curious how you're going to use mobile and mobile phones in addition to your receipts. Are you thinking of a mobile package with that?
Yes. So what's happening right now in sub-Saharan Africa is there's a proliferation of mobile money, which is pretty much kiosks that are found in communities. So we are developing a platform that will interact with the mobile agents that will then provide financial services to these platforms. We are also integrating with warehouse facility systems that will just automatically send us a warehouse receipt when a request is made on their platform to get financing from us. So there is a vetting system that we will use to actually disperse the loans through the mobile agents. Yeah.
Evelyn, great job.
Thank you.
Again, I'm curious, having done a little work in Zambia ourselves at our company, how are you, I thought you talked about using agents, using individuals to reach these women. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Help me understand the connection between your platform and your business model and how you're using people to connect to the ultimate customer.
Okay. So what we have done is we are in the cloud and have invented a package, an online management platform. So this is what the mobile agents are using on their tablets in the communities. Normally it's under a kiosk, a roadside stand, which they will use to give services. Now pre-hand, we will have agreements. We will have agreements with warehouse facilities. We will have agreements with the government code in our country that government employees can use to get loans through. We will have agreements pre-hand with organizations that give savings groups. So once these people once we have these agreements, their members, their employees can go to these agents to actually access our facility because we'll have their pre-information and then we can just vet them based on what they have provided to the agent. Thanks.
Very good, very good pitch, Evelyn. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You know, can you talk a little bit more about you're using a new signal, right? A credit decisioning signal, which is the receipts.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you're doing there and whether you have any early data on the correlationship between credit worthiness and the data that you're collecting on the grains at the warehouses? Just because, at the end of the day, it's all about credit decisioning, right? So just talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. So just to give it some background information. So after agriculture in my country, men are most likely to get jobs while women remain dependents or grow food for sustainability. So women farmers are the most registered members in all these warehouse facilities that are providing high grain produce that the warehouse accepts because they have a criterion that they actually receive for the women to actually put grain in their facility. So they give us tradable warehouse receipts that we can use in the event that they default. We can sell on live markets. So the catch with us is the catch with these markets is that we need to monitor what the market rate prices are. And that is how we give qualifying loans to these women. So pretty much they grow maize, sorghum, cotton. So the lowest price that such products can go for is $10. $10. So pretty much what our vetting system, $10 per kg. So pretty much our vetting system is about the lowest price that we can get our money back, as well as providing loans to these women. So the biggest thing is to get high-grain products into the warehouse facility, and then they hand over the warehouse receipt to us, who put a caveat, because we now own the warehouse receipt until those women pay back our loans, and then we can give them back their warehouse receipt.
Oh, that's really, really smart. And are there other microfinance institutions that use a similar approach? Because you're estimating basically income, right?
Yes.
You're saying that's a proxy for income, and therefore you can... how do the other microfinance institutions in the country decision credit?
So currently, there are microfinance institutions that are offering small loans, but we will be the first microfinance institution in our country that will operate online. So how we have picked up on this idea is that as we interacted in the market, women farmers said, we don't have collateral, how can you help us? So it's not until we discovered that majority of them are taking to trade, are getting warehouse receipts to trade on these live markets for a day that they can find a better rate on the market. So what we then decided quickly is because there is a big market that is untapped in our country, and no one has really picked up on this because it's very small amounts. So for traditional lenders, it's not justifiable for them to actually give loans on these small amounts because it doesn't support their operational costs. So immediately building a branchless service means we're operating a very lean structure. We only have 4 employees in our company. So the goal for us is to produce a very affordable product and make sure that the system is automated from A to Z. So very little human interference. Thanks.
Let's give a big hand for Evelyn. Thanks, Evelyn. I'd like to welcome to the stage Vivek Kumar of Clickit from the United States.
"75% of workplace harassment victims experience retaliation when they speak up. It's why many of them never do. Or it's why we see hashtag #MeToo trending across social media. The problem with walking into an HR department, or writing an email to your manager, or trying to meet with the supervisor one-on-one about an issue you're having, is that in all of those scenarios, you, as the individual, have to put yourself out there. And not everyone is like the people in this room who feels comfortable doing something like that. So how can companies solve this problem that costs them millions of dollars a year in lawsuits, settlements, decreased productivity, turnover, and sick leave? Well, Clickit solves this problem. We make it super easy for organizations to engage with their employees through a simple micro-pulse survey that's taken before office workers access the internet at work each day. Our patented hardware and software solution easily integrates with your office Wi-Fi network. Employee engagement is a $75 billion market, and there are many solutions that exist for this type of thing. But there are 4 things we do differently than any other solution that exists. Number 1, we capture a 90% response rate. You cannot fix what you do not know. Number 2, we can do all of this in real time when employees are still on site. Number 3, we're able to capture information from the local area network that's not necessarily user-generated. And number 4, we can store all data locally rather than in the cloud. Think of us as Cisco meets SurveyMonkey. And while we can decrease the likelihood of harassment cases going unreported, we can also increase employee engagement through welcome announcements, pulse surveys, polls, leaderboards, articles of the day, and more. We charge companies $5 to $10 per employee per month, and we're already doing $240,000 in annual revenue with a similar solution we have in the hotel industry, where we collect guest feedback when guests are signing onto the internet there. We serve 120 paying customers in the United States, India, and Canada, and we have 99% customer retention. Our team comprises of individuals from leading institutions, including the University of Pennsylvania and the Wharton School, as well as corporate and startups as well. And we've already raised $630,000 and are looking for another $370K as part of a $1 million seed round. Thank you. We hope you'll come on board and help build this with us.
Thanks, Vivek. We have time for some judges' questions.
Yep. So you said this, right? Think of you like a Cisco with SurveyMonkey. Question would be, why wouldn't organizations just do this in-house? I mean, I know of a number of large organizations that just build their own. Why would they look at outsourcing this?
Well, it's a great question. So there are great players in the space of Wi-Fi, Cisco, Era, Luma. There are great players in the space of surveys, SurveyMonkey, GetFeedback, et cetera. It's very difficult to actually be able to integrate a piece of hardware onto someone's office network and not cause any disruptions. And it doesn't look like it's a very easily scalable thing to do unless you have a background in that space. And so no one's actually already completely conquered the market of combining the Cisco plus the SurveyMonkey aspect. There are other competitors, Glint, Tiny Pulse, etc. But none of them are able to get a 90% response rate. And the response rates that these companies are getting are often from people who are more active or are more extremist in their responses. They're not able to get the average employee's response, and so they're always missing out on some of these aspects. But what we do is we collectively ask everyone in the organization the same question, ensuring they're not putting themselves out there, but are simply choosing a multiple choice option that anyone else in the organization could pick as well.
Okay, thanks.
So you said it's already been implemented across the various customers. So how many customers it has been implemented, and what is the success rate you have seen so far?
So we initially started in the hotel industry. Actually, we were here in India and then in the US. And we have a 99% customer retention rate in the hotel industry, and we have 120 paying customers. And that's the 240K in annual revenue run rate. We are now expanding into the employee engagement market, which is a much larger market, and we currently have a few live pilots going on. We're seeing a similar use case of the product, although it's on a local internal network rather than a guest network. We have not started monetizing on the employee engagement side just yet, but the early pilots are going very well, and we're moving much faster in this market than we ever did in the hospitality market.
So the piloting is only done in the hotel industry?
Yes, we've primarily in 1 to 3 star hotel, motels, and B&Bs, 22 states in the US, a little bit here in India and Canada as well.
Vivek, nice presentation, well done. Just a question of, have you, with the rates and the process that you're getting about, have you had any early data about increases in engagement from employees or any results on what this has done to increase employee engagement or enhance the employee experience for the employee or the company?
You know, it's so early for us on that. We just started this in October, and we already have about 10 live pilot sites. So it's not enough data in terms of a time period to be able to prove that. But what we can say is the initial results from people we've been working with on it are very positive. They find it's very actionable advice, and it's often little things that you'd never think of, like the lighting could be improved in the office. A very easy fix. Or in a hotel, it's often, I wish I had extra pillows, or my TV remote isn't working. These are not things you'd necessarily report to the front desk, or maybe you'd go on TripAdvisor after the fact. But if it's super easy to present it to you, you're much more likely to just interact with it. And that's where we see the 99% retention that we have in the hotel space.
Thank you.
So just a closing piece of advice. Your technology is really good, but I think where you will beat out the enterprise companies like a SurveyMonkey and other is that there is such an extreme need for social relevance right now with Me Too campaign, with harassment going on. And I think where you will beat out getting contracts is you lead with the social value here, because there will be a greater trust from an HR director seeing a smaller company that really cares. So I would just put that forward as the social conscience is elevating right now, the business imperative of this right now. So I would lead with that every time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivek. Great job. Let's give him a round of applause. And last but not least, we have one more pitch, and that is from Saurabh Raj from Anaxi Digital Runners from India. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Saurabh Raj, and I represent Anaxi Digital Runners. So India is the second largest country in terms of population, but definitely not the second largest market. I would say not even the third largest market. Why is it so? Because India, as we all know it, it belongs to the tier 1 cities, or the cities where the penetration of products and services is huge. But roughly 50%, in fact more than that, that comprises of 700 million people, they reside in the tier 3 and tier 4 towns of India. Rather, there are around 600,000 villages in India where we actually do not have sufficient resources to reach out to them. So what we are trying to do is that we are creating a fleet on street that would be helpful for the companies as well as for the government authorities to make those products and services reachable to all these people. By how we are doing is, we are creating a fleet of people, more than 200,000 digital runners, who will be providing all these services, helping us in creating data, helping us in collecting data by doing surveys, and marketing and distribution of products and services. Currently, we are operational in more than 3,000 villages with a fleet of around 3,500 digital runners. We have worked with a lot of companies like Byju's, which have helped in the distribution of their educational platform. So essentially, why this is the right time to do it is because with the advent of Aadhaar and the banking, and the financial technologies, we're able to reach to all those people, to those 600,000, to those millions of people that are there in those villages. But what we feel is there is a challenge in how do you actually reach out to them, because you don't have the sufficient man force that can actually reach to the remotest parts of the country. So essentially, a digital runner is generally consists of a person who's a representative of a particular village. Generally, what we see is in almost every village, you'll find those people who's relatively more qualified and who's relatively very well conversant with the technologies. So at NXZ, we have created a platform where we are onboarding those people and connecting them with the companies who require any sort of data or any sort of KYC or any sort of requirement or any sort of distribution or marketing strategies that they need to be implemented onto the remotest parts of the country. So that's what we do. Thank you.
Judges, the floor is yours.
Yeah. So what exactly is a digital runner? What does he do? I mean, does he have a photocopying machine? What does he do?
So digital runner is essentially a person who is relatively conversant with the technology.
I got that. What does he? Does he have some kind of a?
Yes. So he has a mobile application wherein whatever task is assigned to him, it's given to him on this application. The tasks generally comprise of either data collection or KYCs or maybe distribution or background verification checks or maybe some marketing of a particular application or a particular product. So that's what we are trying to do with a digital. That's essentially a digital runner.
How do you ensure, how comfortable with you would I be, for example, if a digital runner comes to my house and says, okay, I need to, click your Aadhaar card or your PAN card?
So we have actually collaborated with a lot of background verification companies wherein they pass on our tasks. So let's say if somebody wants to get a verification done for a particular person, so we provide us with the details on our platform, and then we pass on that requirement to that digital runner who is in that corresponding location. And obviously, since it's not that we don't go randomly to those people. Once a task is assigned to us, that's when we approach that particular guy, and he's obviously aware of it, about the verification or the survey, whatever is happening.
Okay. So this digital runner just collects the personal information from the customers, right? So how do you think that, how do you help your customers understand the value of your business?
I'm sorry?
How do you help your customers understand the value of your business?
Okay, so I'll give you an example. We've recently collaborated with a doctor discovery platform, wherein what we are doing is we are collecting data of doctors for their application from the remotest parts of the country. I mean, we have already, since with the 3,000 digital runners that we currently have, we have reached out to more than 9,000 villages and we have collected data for them. So that's a kind of value generating. It's an on-demand fleet that will be available for different countries, different companies, which can be utilized either to understand the customers or understand his requirements or maybe to market their product. So that's where the value we are generating for a company. Instead of rather hiring somebody else, we are providing them an access to an on-demand network of individuals who can be used at their disposal for whatever needs that may arise.
Hey, thank you and congratulations. I think it's a very interesting idea. Can you talk a little bit about, so your runners, are they employed by you? Are they on a variable? No. How do they get paid? How does this business, because that's the core issue, right? Yes. How do you make it pay? So tell us a little bit about that and the business model that you have.
Yes. So these are paid only on the basis of the task that we are able to provide them. And let's say if the pricing of that specific requirements obviously calculated on individual basis. So if a company has a particular requirements, and we calculate the costs that are involved, and then that's when we provide the quotes. So we take, charge something for our platform to run the platform, and rest of this is passed on to the digital runner. So a digital runner, essentially, it's not employed with us, nor he's working full time with us. He's taking it as a source of some extra income, which is only given to him when there's a task that is being performed by the digital runner.
And what would be the top 5 types of things where you think you can get paid from corporates for this service?
Yeah. So background verification is one thing that is working out very well with us. And surveys is another thing. The third is data collection in the remotest part of the location. And we've also worked with Byju's for marketing of their application in those villages, because that's a segment that is always generally neglected. So these are the 4 or 5 areas which we think are going to be the topmost revenue items.
We have time for one more question.
So one more. What are the regulations, government regulations, you think that would impact your business model?
I think the government regulations will only be applicable on the verification front, because we also have our access. Hello. I think it's gone.
Great. Thank you very much, Subram. Great job. Let's give a hand to all 6 of our GIST pitchers. I think we can all appreciate that this is a very difficult environment to give a pitch in. I think they all did an exceptional job. We're going to give the judges a whole 5 minutes to deliberate and to announce our winner. So we have only 5 minutes. Don't go far, and we'll be announcing the winner from the fintech and digital economy sector. Thank you very much.
My name is Ritu Varma. I run a fund called Ankur Capital, and I think I'm here because of the virtue of the fact that this fund actually invests in a lot of agri startup companies. We're looking at innovation, and we're looking at solutions to the larger agri problem that there is here. So I'm honored to be here to join a lot of people on this panel who have a lot of deep agri experience and are working at changing agriculture from different points of views and different parts of the globe. So I'm going to walk through a few of the things that we're going to talk about, and then let these gentlemen here talk about their views of what and how they see solutions in the future. So what I guess all of us probably know is that the number of people in this world is going to grow. We're going to be 9.7 billion is the prediction in the next 30 years. And we all still need to eat. So where and how is that food going to come? And the prediction is that perhaps productivity or agricultural yields have to increase by 70%. How is that going to happen? So that's one part of it. That's talking about the numbers here. But there's another part to it. How and what we eat and the intensity of that has also gone up over the last decade or so. So the pressures on the planet to be able to produce the kind of food that we want to eat, the water intensity, the things we want to eat in different parts of the world that traditionally don't quite grow there, all of these also add to the stress going through the future. So what I would like all of my panelists here to sort of talk about is what is the technology revolution, if it's a technology revolution, or what is the revolution, let me say, that will happen to address this issue in front of us over the next, let's say, 20 years. Yeah. So each of them have a very unique perspective on it. So what I'm going to request is that all of you introduce yourself and what you do very briefly. And then perhaps if you could bring the perspective from what you're doing as to how you see the future in the technology revolution. We've had technology revolutions in the past. Some of it has been through mechanization. Some of it has been through seed development. You know, do things have to happen differently in the next 20 years? You know, and what will it be? So I'm going to start with the gentleman on my right, who's been involved in this for a long, long time, and perhaps has a view of the past as well as the future. So I would love to get your views on, you know, where you think we are going here.
Thank you, Ritu. My name is Shivakumar. I work for a Indian company, ITC, which is into a fairly large canvas of agri-businesses, most of them linked to consumer brands at the front end and going back all the way to agriculture and agricultural R&D. And when this panel was coming up, and one of the first questions that the group thought about was, how do you envision agriculture in 20 years? I was noting down some thoughts, but then I thought, maybe I should crowdsource this to my social media friends. And plenty of them have experience in agriculture. So 3 days ago, I had put up this one question on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And it was an overwhelming response. And when I just list them down, it came to 20 pages. And so I quickly synthesized some of that and called out what I also believe is how we would look at this 20 years going forward. So obviously, the future will be shaped by current aspirations of people. And one perspective Ritu already talked about, which is the consumer perspective. So the consumer perspective that got voiced in these inputs was one, of course, is given that it will be a large population, sufficient quantity, and given that we are talking about food, tasty. Otherwise, you know, somebody also said, you know, with nanobots in our bloodstream and with our memory possibly already put on the cloud, we probably won't need food, but we may just need some battery and solar power. So that's not inconceivable. But keeping that aside, tasty obviously is one element in food, and safe, which is a big concern today, and nutritious, which is another concern, and obviously all this at reasonable prices. So which is the consumer aspiration as to what are we looking for. Then of course the most important stakeholder when it comes to agriculture and food is the farmer. And with billions of small farmers around the world, you know, higher incomes is an important aspiration. Given that per capita income for, when you take emerging economies like India, the farmers per capita is hardly a fourth or fifth of the national per capita. It must double, triple, and probably more than that in these 20 years that we are seeing, and at lower risk, not just income, because quite often the farmer is facing risk on production as well as in pricing front, and some dignity for labor, because that's been one of the major issues why the next generation of farmers is not interested, besides that not being attractive from a financial perspective, and a better quality of life in villages where they live and cultivate. So these are the aspirations from the farmers. At a broader society level, there are aspirations with respect to conserving and renewing natural resources. You know, if you just look at India as one example, and my other global friends I'm sure will talk about it at a global level. In India, we are 17% of world's population, but only 4% of world's freshwater resources, and only 2.5% of world's land. Topsoil being an important part of that land when you talk about agriculture, and consequently one needs to look at conserving and renewing, and being resilient to climate change. I mean, today we see rains in summer and very warm winters, and none of this anymore surprises us because now it's been happening for the last few years. And therefore, how are you resilient to agriculture, resilient to climate change in agriculture, and possibly contribute to mitigating the impact of climate change also, because agriculture can do several things in terms of carbon sequestration and so on and so forth, and release of certain gases, and carbon miles is a big issue in agriculture depending on where it is grown and where it is consumed, and so on. Now, if these are the aspirations, how would they shape? And I gave 3 titles to all the ideas that came from these 200 odd inputs from my friends. First is, like already Ritu mentioned, farms will become factories. So that means you are producing designer, in some sense, products that the consumers are seeking. We talked about consumer aspirations. Therefore, using all technology and producing as per consumer needs, And the riding on ideas like Industry 4.0 and IoT and many of these things, without necessarily listing all the technologies, the most interesting idea which came is about self-managing adaptable seeds. You said, yeah, you put the seed in, it will germinate and open up by sensing if the weather is going to be a very wet season or is it going to be a dry season, what kind of soil will be there. But this is still in the imagination stage. I'm sure what is imagined today will be a reality tomorrow. And so obviously from a protected agriculture where we cover everything into greenhouses and polyhouses and so on, the times have come. And actually, I know even 20 years ago, we had interesting examples on coated seeds that these germinate, open up, and then after that, if there is continuous period of drought, they will germinate a second time. So those things are even things of past at one point of time, though it was not commercially a big success. So therefore, this is one kind of shift that will occur. The second interesting theme is homes will become farms. Right now, only some people have farms at homes besides the farmers who do it as a profession. Like I have a large farm in my backyard together with a greenhouse. So all the vegetables that we grow are sufficient enough not only for all our colony but also to a lot of friends. And some of this will become increasingly common with vertical agriculture coming in. It will also assure the consumer of a safety, and not everything obviously can be grown. Some things can be grown like this, but that is something which will happen, and probably some of that we'll talk about in due course of time in the session. But while farms will become factories, homes will become farms as another theme that came through. And third, I'm titling as, in some sense, a back to basics, that if all the three aspirations were to be taken together, it will not be the chemically intensive, input intensive monoculture that we have come to live with in the recent past, but more likely to be integrated polyculture or a permaculture. There's multiple crops which gives that biodiversity, as well as a fair amount of livestock and animal husbandry which will be part of that. And you'll have things like beekeeping. And most interestingly, production of renewable energy can be an important part of a farming activity. Whether you look at solar, whether you look at wind, or whether you look at biogas, depending on whatever activities that are there. So that, in a sense, is back to basics. This is what we have been doing. The first time I went to sell an insurance product to a farmer, about 20 years ago now, saying that here, because of government subsidy and very interesting design of the product, all you need to pay is 5% premium, and your risk is covered. So once in 20 years, you face a risk and it is covered, so it looks like a reasonable premium. This farmer said, no, it doesn't make sense, because the way you are talking is like one crop and once in 20 years, but I have a mix of 4 crops. And within 4 crops, 2 of them have multiple planting dates of different varieties. So unless your premium comes down to 2%, it doesn't make sense to me. So those who are aware are able to manage their risks also in this interesting manner, which is basically talking about going back to basics in terms of polyculture and permaculture. So I thought these are the 3 very interesting themes that emerged. I'm just synthesizing and putting these kind of titles as to where the future that we can envision in 20 years from now.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to get a different perspective in here. And would you say that's the India perspective, or was that the global perspective? What was the social media crowdsourcing?
Yeah, nearly 95% of these inputs were from Indians, but reasonably global Indians.
Okay.
The nature of issues that we talked about in terms of climate change and consumer concern about food, and farmers, okay, in some countries with a huge amount of subsidy, farmers may be better off, but nonetheless, unless you integrate all this modern technology, even there you're competing.
Okay.
So it's more applicable to Indian and some other emerging economies, but I guess equally applicable in some sense to every part of the world also.
I'm going to turn to you, Maxim, right? And I think you work with 2 very interesting components, water, as well as, you know, making something a farm that is traditionally not a farm here. So we'd love to get the Israeli perspective, and the other piece is the fact that you're coming from somewhere which has a lot of stressed land, has already had to deal with a lot of the issues that were mentioned about climate change, etc. How do you see things changing 20 years from now? I mean, what is going to take that productivity level up to a completely different bar?
So, hello to everybody. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Maxim Pasik. I am the chairman of the big group of companies that invest in different fields like real estate, infrastructure, high-tech technology, nanotechnology, water, agriculture, etc. I'm also serve as a vice chairman of Euro-Asian Jewish Congress. It's a congress that contains 27 countries, including India. And it's my pleasure, it's my first time coming to India, it's my pleasure to be here. And recently, we invested in very two interesting companies that we are focusing and give almost all of our time to these two projects. So first project is WaterGen. And WaterGen is a company that making water from the air in the most revolutionary technology, that it takes very small amount of energy in order to produce 1 liter of clean, safe drinking water. Almost 250 watt per liter, so it's almost nothing. And it's comparable to the best mineral water that you drink. And the second company is Vertical Fields. That company find also pioneer technology in order to make the food and to clean the air vertically. So actually what we are doing and those technologies are, by the way, connected, because as you told, we need the food, but we need the water in order to grow the food. So if we don't have the water, proper water to grow the food, so we will not have the food. So it's two issues that are connected to one to other. And we invested in those companies because we would like to help to the people. This is our first priority. For sure, it's not NGO, it's pure business companies, but we would like to help to people because we think that this is the most two important aspects that the humanity is handling now is the scare of the lack of the clean drinking water and also the huge pollution that we have in the cities. So actually the Vertical Field company, I would like to show because I don't have the pictures here. This is the project that we did in Israel. This is 17 floors building that we covered from all the sides with green forest. And why the people should cover the buildings with the green forest? Because of pollution. Because we don't have space in order to put the trees. So what we are doing, we're taking the building, either from inside or from outside, and we are covering all the building with the trees. So you have the vertical forest on the trees. And actually, the 1,000 meters of this forest is equal that you put 50 trees or 15 meters each in order to clean the air. So it's a lot of space. Nobody has space because the people now coming from the villages to the cities. So it's happening not only in India, it's happening everywhere. It's happening also in Israel, in Tel Aviv. In Tel Aviv is full of people, and also the pollution is high. Not like here, but the pollution is very high, and we need to clean the city, and we don't have the space. So this is the excellent solution in order to clean the cities, because it's fully scalable. You can make walls of tens of thousands of meters with big trees. It's not small grass that you put, it's very big. And the plus of this technology that is cleaning a lot of air, it is taking a very small amount of water because this system is fully computerized with very smart irrigation system. So it's taking very small amount of air, of water, and actually it's also connected to the air condition of the building. And on top of this to our WaterGen technology, so you don't need any water in order to make the vertical forest on your buildings inside or outside. So this is one aspect. The second aspect is regarding the vertical farming. We don't have space as I told, the people are moving from villages to the cities. We have more and more pollution in the water, so we have problems also with the food, because we need the water in order to make the food. So we made in 2015 and presented the State of Israel in Milano in Expo 2015, and we created the biggest vertical farming wall in the world, that actually we can grow vertically from corn to rice to wheat to whatever. So actually you can imagine that you can put in Mumbai the wall of 5,000 meters that is vertically, that don't require any space because it's going to the height, that you can put here whatever you wish. And it's taking, again, the small amount of water, it's produce you a very healthy food without any nutrients and anything. And it's cleaning a lot of air, and it's also very nice. On top of that, one of the benefits of these walls that we are now working with different countries is to teach people for the smart agriculture, because it is very smart agriculture. Everything here is computerized from A to Z, everything. So it's interesting because in nowadays, the young people are not interested in agriculture because it's old. But what we are doing the high-tech agriculture, the smart agriculture. So actually we provide to the young people to start to deal with agriculture because it's interesting for them. And this is our two solutions that we provide.
So do you see this is what will happen to agriculture in Israel in the next 20 years?
I think yes, because we have less and less territories in order to grow the food. And most of the people are coming to the cities. And also regarding the water, we see here the mineral bottles. Okay, why we should use it? It's making huge pollution to the environment, huge. With our product, we see that in 10 years, we will change the mineral bottles. It will no mineral bottles. The people can drink the water from the air. It's enough water in the air. We have water in the air much more than in all rivers combined.
Okay.
So why to do it?
Okay. So I'm going to turn to you. If you could introduce yourself and sort of give us perhaps, I mean, you have a global perspective, you're looking at entrepreneurs, you're looking at innovations.
True.
From 5 continents, you said, right? So he's talked about the Israeli situation in which he thinks, land is scarce, so both water, having a, what I would call an integrated system and moving that to vertical farming is something that he sees in the future from the Israeli context.
Israel is quite advanced, and it's a point of reference for many.
Not Israel, but about the other countries, etc., and the innovations that you see, and what do you see for the next 20 years?
I'm Michael Stangos from Industry Disruptors. It's an organization that started 5 years ago in Greece as a reaction to the huge crisis that Greece was undergoing. I'm an entrepreneur. We survived the crisis, so we decided bottom up to help youngsters to achieve their ideas and become and change also the culture and become more entrepreneurial. We see many verticals. One of the verticals that we focused from 2014 is agro-food innovation. We created Future Agro Challenge, which organically grew in 64 countries by now. And it's actually creating agro-innovation hubs ecosystem. It starts with a talent discovery. It's a global competition that is running in these countries, and actually try to identify the most innovative ideas and startups in the agro-food section. And after that, we try to help them grow through a virtual and physical incubation process. We bring them together and we create networks for them as a go-to-market strategy. We take them, if they are mature enough, to big exhibition like Zanuga and Sial in Europe, or Dubai exhibition, or big innovation conferences like DLD in Israel, if it's regarding agrotech. And also we gather once a year together. This year we were in South Africa, part of the Global Entrepreneurship Congress. of GEN, Global Entrepreneurship Network. In 2018, we were going to be in Istanbul. We fly there more than, this year will be 2018 will be more than 100 startups. We try to bring also relevant investors to match them equally and there discover opportunities for working together. And it's a 3-day agripreneur summit. We bring important people to discover exactly what are the new areas that they should focus. And also we're trying to go down to the farmers as well, because exactly agripreneurship is not so sexy, and the youngsters, they go directly to tech. But imagine that we have two different situations. One is that we concentrate into big cities, and then we need to go to vertical farming, but at the same time, only 10% of the planet is being cultivated. So, especially in developing countries, and I'm going to the global perspective, each continent has completely different need to address. Bottom line, the water is the key element, but when we go to Africa, where there is no electricity to move, or partially in India, you have to address completely different needs, and the solutions you need to give, they will end up being technological, but also you need to train the mindset of the people and the farmers and help them, because someone at the end of the day has to be on the land and do the work. So this is briefly what we do.
And what do you see happening to change in the next 20 years?
Look, for sure the disruption will be technological. Blockchain in agriculture will be one of the major issues. There is a big question also we need to address about food and about genetically modified crops and where this is going. We need also to address obesity. Obesity is growing in all over the world and is huge implication for all healthcare systems. And there should be, and there is a turn to healthier food. But how we achieve healthier food, again, is a big challenge. So it's for sure is going technological. It's a no-brainer. But how we end up there and how we actually put more people in agriculture, it's a big challenge.
So if I hear you right, you're saying technology is going to play a role, but in addition to technology playing a role, we also need to get more people involved in agriculture as opposed to leaving agriculture. That's an interesting perspective, because in India, we kind of have the opposite problem, right? 40% of the people, 15% of the GDP. I think people need to leave agriculture is what the way we sort of look
there,
at it.
the disruption should be bigger technologically.
Right.
But, you know, if you, bottom line is what you started saying. By 2050, 9 billion, more than 9 billion people need to eat food, you know.
Last but not the least, right? I mean, we've heard enough about climate issues and sort of, you know, that being a significant component here, right? So will you tell us what you do and sort of, you know, your view on the 20-year horizon here?
Sure. Just introduce myself. My name is Ramana Gogula. I run the clean technology innovation aspect of Stanley Black & Decker. Stanley Black & Decker is, as all of you know, is primarily a tools company. We make some of the best tools in the world. It's a $12 billion company. About a year ago, I got approached by them to carve out a clean tech strategy for a large social problem in India. So that was the reason I was hired. And a little bit myself, I'm a social entrepreneur, started 3 companies, failed successfully twice, and moderately successful once. But I've also been a VC for 2 companies. I've funded companies, we've looked at startups. I have a good understanding of the ecosystem of entrepreneurs and the mindset. And so with all this experience, we are now looking at a large social problem to solve. And my advice was, before I took this job, is most people sit in laboratories and work out solutions or sit before the computers and carve out problem-solving ideas based on Google searches. And I think social innovation should be outside in. It can't be inside out. If you want to do corporate innovation, you have to go out into the field. You have to sit with the farmer. So I made a deal that I'm going to do this job, but we're going to do it outside in. So we took an 8-acre farm close by over here. And this farmer grows, he's got mangoes, coconuts, vegetables primarily in this area. It's semi-arid, Telangana. And the social problem that we identified was basically pumps. India has about 25 million pumps in this country. 15 million are AC, primarily. About 10 million are diesel pumps. The 15 million AC pumps draw 1/5 of the total electricity we generate in this country. 20% of the electricity we generate in India is eaten up by inefficient AC pumps. The diesel pumps, the 10 million of them, spit out hundreds of millions of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, right? And are causing tremendous atmospheric pollution. Stanley Black & Decker is a company that wants to build business around a social purpose. That's our purpose, to make this world a better place. So we decided this is what we're going to look at. So this is the problem on the outside. If you look at our organization, what are our core competencies? We make some of the best motors in the world, right? The drive power tools. We use a lot of lithium-ion batteries. So I said, let's look at these two components, technology components, and see how we can retrofit them into the large social problem, which is pumps. Every pump is a motor, right? So we are now building an agriculture platform, at the heart of which is a BLDC motor, a brushless DC motor that sinks into these bore wells and pulls out water. We just did the first test a month ago, and we can now draw about 100,000 liters of water a day with this highly efficient brushless DC pump that we designed. The other aspect of this whole innovation is that just like when cell phones started, right, primarily used for data, your voice, you're talking to somebody else. But around the phone, the innovation, the camera, the social media, the banking systems, the applications, the games, these are all innovations at the periphery. So we are now using this solar technology to run this pump. And what we thought was, what if we take the excess energy we generate as we draw water from the earth and push it into a small home for off-grid lighting? Take some of this excess energy, push it into a cold storage, so the farmers can actually put their vegetables into a cold storage on their farms and wait for the right prices before they go out and start selling them. It's supply chain for agriculture. What if we took a little bit of this energy and drove a drip irrigation system so that you don't deplete the water table, right? So you use water effectively. What if the pump had a brain of its own so that you can take the demographics of the land, you can take the demographics of the farmer, find out the soil content, the moisture, the atmospheric pressure, and you shoot it out to a bunch of people who can then look at this data and analyze how best to make the farmer productive, right? So this is what I see, to answer your larger question. Digital farming, right, and micro irrigation are important aspects to turn farms into factories. I'm very impressed with what I heard, with what the gentleman from Israel was talking about, vertical farming. I think it's definitely an area to go into. And Shiv has, so wisely alluded to the three aspects of, I think, the changes that are going to happen. And I think urban farming is huge. I have a home here in Hyderabad, and my belief is, because I'm into solar, that outdoor lighting should be free. Outdoor lighting, you should never pay for it, even if you're not going to invest heavily into solar. I believe so. I talk to everybody in my community. We live in a large community, about 120 homes. So now, every home now is slowly moving into this concept of, okay, my gate lights from the sun, my garden lights from the sun, maybe a small light in the backyard from the sun, but it's free. It's all DC. The lights are DC, LED from the sun. So urban farming, I think, if we get into urban farming, I would like to see a little micro drip irrigation system that waters all your plants automatically. There are sensors that as the sun rises, they turn on, or early in the morning or late in the evening. So you can do drip irrigation for your home. You can use the excess power to light up your outdoor lighting in your house. So I think these are all small innovations that entrepreneurs will begin to work on. And the last aspect before I get off is that as we build this solar platform, we are reaching out to entrepreneurs across the world to work with us so that we can innovate in this platform, right? So any one of you who's doing work in agriculture as a startup, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to see if there is a fit into our platform, agriculture platform.
So all of you believe that we are going to be growing our own food?
To some degree.
To some degree.
Yeah.
So does that mean ITC will not have a business 20 years from now?
No, we'll help people grow. That's one business. But when you look at homes as farms, I think it is probably, in our wildest estimate, probably will get about 20% of total food consumption. The big part of it essentially has to come from elsewhere. And if you want me to take some time elaborating on how these homes as farms will really work.
Yes, please do.
And when I said we'll help people grow farms,
them there and then inspire more people and come back. So it's a cycle, and that's what will happen over a period of 30, 40, 50 years. It's not a period of 1 year or 2 years. So we did not have an overnight. Virat Kohli did not become a sensation. We had a Sachin before that. We had a Dravid. We had a Ganguly. Name me as many badminton players or tennis players we've had. You can't, because you've not heard of them, A, and B, because you've not had them either. So like we said earlier, we are a men's cricket watching nation. We love to watch stars and we love to watch that. Unfortunately, we like to celebrate an Olympic medal for about 2 months, 3 months, and then after that it goes back to exactly where it is. You will have someone on the front page, and then again it'll go back to where it is, and then again you'll have only cricket. So it's about balancing as well. It's about a balancing act. I was telling Mitali inside that I think in all of us, unfortunately, the women's cricket has it the worst, because they are competing directly with a men's cricket, which is kind of a religion, in our country. We still are able to do it in other sports because we are a different sport completely. So, but outside of Sania Mirza, can you tell me, Mahesh and Leander, who is the 4th tennis player that you guys know? I don't think that you can, because they've never been published in that sort of way. So yeah, that's to answer your question of, how do we have more girls picking up tennis rackets? Yes, I can help. I can go and talk and I can do it, but we need it to happen, just not an individual on a sort of a, there should be a system that does that.
I actually think you can help by winning more, because the more you win, the more...
I will try.
Yeah, no. No, not in the future.
Try harder.
You've already done that. You've already done that. I think that is the way for women. And I see, for example, I read the other day that we've now, that young Indian women girl boxers have done really well, because they've got Mary Kom in front of them. Mitali, do our women athletes actually a little tougher because they've had to overcome to reach where they are, and so they're actually tough by the time they get there? Are they actually tougher than most other athletes?
Well, definitely, because as Sania mentioned, that the resources that we have is very limited, and top it all is a perception in our society that women can't play sport, or they cannot.
So don't remember, you'll get too dark. You won't find a husband to marry.
Yeah.
The one I get the most, or I got the most. Thankfully, I don't get it anymore.
So I guess that is a huge thing, because like as I mentioned, that the perception in the society, especially whether it is entrepreneurs, even people who want to support, they would say that ladki kitne saal tak khelegi, so why do we invest in her? Might as well invest in a boy, invest in a male player. So that is why when we struggle in the initial periods, we handle all
of a great entrepreneur who started this thing and really took it off with the whole Bollywood sexy factor, made it really, really watchable. And I know there were some efforts to do that with tennis here in India, but again, I really believe that is the gating factor. If you had, because it goes back to what you said, people in Asia don't view sports as proper business. But you know what's crazy is sports is actually the biggest business in the world. It's a $200 billion revenue business just in US alone, So actually it is much bigger than many, many industries here all over Asia, but Asians don't view it that way. And so I did some studying before I launched One Championship. It's very simple, is that because the Industrial Revolution happened faster in North America and Europe, ahead of Asia, they went from building roads and buildings and factories to building IP-based business like software, technology, media properties, and sports. Meanwhile, Asia, lagging decades behind, India is still building roads and factories and hotels and infrastructure. That was the last few decades of building. So I think the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, we're going to see a massive explosion in sports in Asia as people understand, wow, this is actually massive business. Literally, IPL went from 0 to worth a few $1 billion in a matter of years because of a great entrepreneur and a great marketing plan. So, I don't look at all the problems that Sanya is pointing out and everyone on the panel as permanent. I just think it just needs great entrepreneurs to lead the way in each sport, and you'll see that those 3 pages will end up being 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, or whatever, equally split across all the sports. But right now, IPL dominates, not because of it's some intrinsic thing. It's because there's great stars, great marketing, great entrepreneurship, and great media exposure.
So do we need more marketing then? Is that what it could come down to eventually? Package stars. We're seeing that already happening in a sense with Saina and Sindhu in your sport, while they're not professionally packaged as stars, but everyone knows about them now. So is the future of sport in its packaging and selling to consumers much like you're selling software?
Yeah, whether we like it or not, I think that's the way it is, in the sense. It has to go that way to survive. And yeah.
Is the badminton league a step in that direction?
I think we've been very, very good reviews with the badminton league. Lot more players getting an opportunity, and things looking good from that perspective. So we've in the BWF and in the badminton world of the league, I think badminton is one of the sports which is played around the year, and that's why you get to hear week after week almost getting. But unfortunately, somebody like a Sakshi Malik, after the Olympics, it's almost nothing, in the sense we haven't heard almost till the Commonwealth and the Asian Games. We hardly get to hear them. So definitely some sports suffer because of lack of a proper calendar, lack of proper interest in people following up. And yes, it will be tough for sports to compete against, because it's a chicken and egg thing, which Sanya kind of mentioned. You get stars, you need champions, you need to make stars, you need to get role models, and then the whole cycle. And then maybe cricket did it from '83, and today we are seeing it a different league. Many sports may not have that opportunity to do it, and marketing is important. I would really love to see, because when I was young, we had a state championship, we had full crowds coming. And today we have a state championship, not a single soul turns up. So I think it's a challenge.
As my son told me, the challenge for sport is not sport, but the challenge for sport is that Thor is releasing that week. That Thor is releasing that week, or there's some other movie releasing that week. We are now not only in the sports industry, we are in the wider catch your eyeballs industry.
So whether we like it or not, to say your answer, we have to market the sports better. And sports have to kind of innovate themselves to ensure that they are marketable.
The other big opportunity area that we are seeing in sport, because the number of people who play sport is always very small, but the number of people who think they know sport and often do know sport is much larger, but they don't actually play it. And we are seeing a big change. The smaller the game, the greater the use of analytics. In the sport that I cover, there's huge use of analytics. I know it's true of football. I know it's probably true of tennis as well. Is analytics something that is an opportunity for someone who cannot play but wants to be in the sports industry, and is that actually helping improve performance?
I mean, that's analytics, technology, whatever you call it, right? Like at the end of the day, today I can see like there's a machine that they put on where it analyzes if I hit a forehand, how much is the ball spinning? You know, at what rate it's spinning? Like, I mean, it was unheard of before. There's a court in Indian Wells where everybody just goes there and sees, they practice for an hour and then they can analyze basically how much. So a person who has not played sport, it's probably easier for them to understand the velocity that the ball is spinning or how fast it's going or whatever. Like my backhand was, I mean, I don't know, like on a constant basis 30 miles slower than my forehand. So, but that is something over an hour. So it takes, so yeah, it does help to maybe understand the sport. But I think when you do play a sport and, you know, like we have or we are, we still see it differently, and probably he's right. We're seeing it as athletes, which is why we are, I mean, I don't agree that we need Bollywood to make our sport popular or any sport popular. It's a separate industry. So what he's saying is that, yeah, there's an entrepreneurship where the entrepreneur is great. He's gotten Bollywood and made it sexy, but that's not what we're playing sport for. That goes back to what Gopi was saying. Why did we start playing sport? Kabaddi is, I mean, you can have Bollywood in Kabaddi, but you're not going to make it sexy.
No,
you know?
I think what he's saying is you bake a great cake and wrap it in brown paper. People are not buying it. So you bake a great cake and you wrap it in lovely paper, increase the price by a little bit, but you add to the buyability of your product. So you can be a great athlete, but if you're wrapped in brown paper, no one's buying you. I think that's the point he's making.
But I don't think that's right, because I think that you still have, you know, you make a movie on Mary Kom, who had heard of Mary Kom before Mary Kom was made? How many people? I mean, I don't know, I don't see any hands up here. So, or two. Okay. So I think that, yeah, Bollywood is great and all that, and you, like you're saying, you can put it in a golden wrapper and you can showcase it. But at the end of the day, that's why we need to become a sporting nation where we celebrate sport. We don't have to celebrate sport through another channel, is what I'm saying. But I think that's just emotion talking because I'm an athlete.
True.
You know?
Bollywood is a great example. I know they don't hate the word Bollywood, so let's just say the Indian film industry is a great example of sometimes great talent and sometimes extremely average talent, making it because it's well packaged. So maybe packaging is the answer.
So I think, you know, Tanya's onto something that you know, sports at its essence should be pure, and that's why athletes are attracted to it. But the reality is, if you look at any multi-billion-dollar sports media property in the world, it all starts with phenomenal marketing and a lot of Bollywood type of elements to create the glamour behind a star athlete like Sanya. You see, if we just presented her as a tennis player and that's it, and hear her titles, no one would care. But if you start to glamorize it a little bit and put on a little bit of wow factor, her life story or the trials and tribulations or, you know, TV series or whatever, you know, at the end of the day, sports is a media business. That's the reality. And if all these athletes want to make a lot of money and make a proper living, if we want to build more hard courts, if we want to build all that, it all begins with hiring a rock star CEO who can package everything in gold paper, right?
So you need storytellers. It's good to know that somebody thinks that storytellers.
Oh no, most definitely. Storytelling is everything in sports. Storytelling is everything.
But he's absolutely right. You tell the story of how Sanya started playing tennis on a cow-dung court. You tell the story of how tell the story of how you started playing cricket. I mean, once those stories get told, then the aura around the athlete grows. Then there's another young girl somewhere who's saying, oh, if Mithali could start like that, I could. And then we start the whole process. The storytelling starts creating champions. Is that what we're heading at?
Well, it is important that you need
water
to
tank,
have...
a cement tank.
Yeah. Way back, we didn't have any infrastructure, and because we were not under BCCI, we were under WCI, so the kind of facilities which were access to women's cricket was far lesser than what it is now. It has come a long way since then. Before playing, as an India player, I've traveled in trains, unreserved, and I have also prepared myself on matting wickets before getting into international series, playing on a turf. So it was very difficult, but again, the earlier question that when he asked what kind of, how women players get strong mentally, is that when we prepare so hard, today when we have access to the best of facilities, our game is enhanced by leaps and bounds. Had this facility been given much earlier, maybe we would have produced far better cricketers, because with that kind of resources, we still had very quality players back then. So just imagine if we had those players playing in the current situation, the standard of the game would have increased by miles. So it is important that you need to have the best facilities and the infrastructure. But again, there are some sports, there are some players who may not be financially that sound, who are access to those kind of facilities. But again, if you have a role model who've gone through a lot in the initial periods and have played international cricket, that kind of a life story will inspire a lot of these talents from the rural areas, because that's where they don't get those facilities, and yet we have some amazing talents coming from districts, and they migrate to cities for those facilities, and then they make it big. So it is important. You need to have role models, you need to have stories where young girls or young boys look up to role models who they can look up to and take inspiration from.
There's a bit of packaging going on around you as well, isn't it? You're on magazine covers these days, and also it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a sexist thing that I point out, but it's just that when you get onto magazine covers and you look a certain way, then it helps people draw attention to the fact that you play sport a certain way as well. So it's not only wrong. It need not be only right, but it's not only wrong either. Since we're also taught the business of sport, have you seen a revolution in what people are wearing, and in the gear that there is in the performance tools of the sport as well?
Yes, yes, definitely, because technology has definitely impacted the way the players prepare themselves, because like for example in cricket we have the video analyst tagging along with the team, where he shoots the matches and we get the feedback at the end of the match, and as players we bank a lot on those feedbacks to prepare ourselves for the coming games. And also you have these lyrometers and nutritionists, the sports nutritionist. Earlier we never really thought much about the nutrition or diet that a sports person has to go through, but today there's so much of counseling happening around diet, and you have a sports psychologist traveling with the team. So I think it is important. Technology has definitely played a huge role, because these days when you see a lot of matches where a bilateral series, the third country is actually watching both the matches live, and they can plan when they are going to play you next. So they have a feedback on you, what you've done 2 series back. I have a feedback on how many times in a way I have got out in the last 10 innings. So it really helps a player to enhance their game. And you have the bowling machine. You don't need a bowler in the practice during a training sessions. You can just fix a bowling machine and you can just bat for hours and hours. So I think that way
I'm told you bat for hours and hours even if there's bowlers at the other end.
Well, I definitely would want to have more practical training session than the bowling machine, though.
Yeah, when you get the 13, 14-year-olds, or is it even younger, 10, 11-year-olds, are you seeing advances in nutrition? Are you seeing advances in sports technology, in gear as well? And are those opportunities for people who don't play sport, for example? Because we're also talking the business of sport. Is nutrition products, for example, a big sports category?
Well, many of these things are there in the market, in the sense, many of these things
Some are good and some are not so good, right? You're so polite. You're trying very nicely to say some are good and some are not so good.
Just because somebody knows to build a machine and they've used it for something else, it's not necessary that sport has to use it in a certain way. So you have many fields which have come up which are not so relevant, because you know from a naked eye that these things, it is the way it is. And probably sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not really helpful. So we need to draw a distinction between that. And yeah, technology in sport is young. It's badminton also, it's young. We've found it useful. It is helping us scale things up to the next level, and that's where it is. But still, as Mithali mentioned, I think still practical is better, or the human eye, sometimes I would still trust that better.
There's also a new business model probably emerging of coaching coaches, and maybe when Gopi's had enough of coaching players, he can coach more. He can coach more coaches, and they can literally go into the smaller towns. One last question to you, Abhi. Since you mentioned that the leagues and that the commercial side of sport grew much more in Europe and America before it came into Asia, is Asia, and I can talk to you about India, but in your experience, is Asia a paying society, or is Asia an entitlement society where we want things but don't want to pay for them? And if we don't pay for them, then the sport as an industry does not grow. So do we just want everything free to air television, or are we willing to pay to watch sport and participate in sport?
Right. So I think you have to look at the supply chain. So yes, in Asia, fans are not used to paying for tickets. That's a fact all over. And again, it's because sports.
In Delhi, nobody pays.
so
well, everywhere actually.
No, but the reason why is, again, it goes back to the history of the region relative to Europe and relative to North America. I think there will be a day in the future where when sports is run by sophisticated entrepreneurs across Asia, that tickets will be a source of revenue. But the reality is, again, for every major sport, tickets are a small percentage of revenue. The real big people that pay are actually the media broadcasters, right? The Star TVs of the world, or Fox Sports or whoever it is. These guys, because their whole business model is based on advertising and eyeballs, they have to get great content, and they'll pay massive dollars. I'll give you an example. NFL, which is the world's largest sports league, the National Football League in America, has $13 billion in revenues, of which $7 billion comes from media rights. So literally broadcasters paying NFL so CBS or NBC or these guys for the right to air the content. That is where the big money is at. So it doesn't really matter if the fan is paying or not paying, because as long as they're watching, there's massive monetization. If fans are watching, okay, like let's take IPL as an example, all the sponsors will line up. All of the major sponsors will line up to fund, and if they come to fund, and then there's on top of it, the broadcast media rights, then all the athletes are going to make a ton of money, and then it's a self-fulfilling cycle. So that's the side that, again, I think the average athlete or the average person thinks, oh, they're not paying tickets, it's never going to be a big business. Oh, there's no tennis courts. Oh, there's no. The reality, everything starts with media.
And we're seeing that a little bit in India as well, where in the sport that I cover, the amount of money that you're earning from rights is so much that the best way a lot of you can actually participate in the business of sport is, believe it or not, since you're not all athletes in this, the athletes are the majority here, is actually by being the eyeballs. The more eyeballs you provide, the more money comes into sport, the more money filters into the athletes. Now, whether it all filters into the athletes is a separate story completely, but in course of time it will. So if you think you're just a passive person, you're still in the business of sport, if you're providing the eyeballs that draw in the networks who feed the money into sport. I mean, since Saina made it big and Sindhu followed a couple of years later, I'm suddenly seeing a lot more badminton on television. I hadn't seen that much badminton on television before. So Saina started it, and then with Sindhu coming in, there's a lot more badminton on television. I think people started watching mixed doubles and ladies doubles because Sania was in it. We didn't watch it before that. Because you were playing, since you started doing well, more and more the Indian sport started being seen on television. I mean, I remember there's a Wimbledon going on or US Open going on, but they actually take time off to show your game or Leander's game or Mahesh's game. So as you create stars, if more and more people start watching, then more and more people come in as well. So maybe you should just create more stars. While you're one, start the process of creating the next one.
I'll try while I'm trying to win as well more.
No, you will win, don't worry. You can see why she's very good return of serve. She's got a fantastic return of serve, because I'm going to start moving a little more in that direction. Right, so if there's any questions that a lot of you have for this panel, I'm happy to take them, because I've asked a few and I've got a very happy job. I only have to ask questions without knowing the answers.
Hi, my name is Sunil. I'm part of a venture capital firm based out of Bangalore. Among all the legends present out here,
Gopi is a very good investment.
We know that. There's one more legend on the other side of here. We have got amongst us Shekhar Nayak, who's a Padma Shri Award winner and former captain of the blind cricket team. He's out here. He has come all the way from Bangalore just to meet Gopichand and Mithali, and he wants to start an academy for the blind cricketers, and he wants to learn more from Gopichand.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much. So this 2000 18, I'm planning to open a cricket academy for blind cricketers. As you know, for blind cricket, there is no affiliation, no recognition. So I want to work in the grassroots level. So I'm planning to open an academy. I need some advice from Gopichandji. Thank you.
Now, if a lot of you are wondering how do the visually impaired disabled actually play a sport, I was once invited, and I know I'm not a panelist, but I'll just tell you the story very quickly. I was once invited to a visually impaired cricket tournament final. And I was very curious because I knew that they follow sound rather than the actual ball coming at them. And so the ball's actually got a lot of ball bearings, and it's like a rattle. It comes your way, and people play it by the sound. So I said, right, I am going to bat now. And so I closed my eyes, and I said, let me follow the sound of the ball coming. I missed it by a yard. That is how difficult that game is. And I think one of the mistakes that we all make in sport is we try to look for one sport in what is inherently another sport. So we look for Virat Kohli in Mithali Raj. She's got her own skills. Virat's got his own skills. Similarly, with the disabled sport, we need to look at it as a different sport, and then suddenly you'll start going, wow. Which is what happens when you see the Paralympics, for example. You suddenly see the Paralympics and you go, wow, are they really that good? And when you saw the Indian high jumper, we went, wow, can he really be that good? So, well done, good to hear from you. Professor Gopi is good. Yeah. Sorry, she's got the mic, so we'll come to you in a minute. It's like tenancy who got it there.
Good afternoon. While I understand it's important to have entrepreneurs, stars, and coaches, one thing I wanted to hear the panel mention is making parents aware, because parents are the most important decision makers in terms of, is it academics or is it sports? And I ask this because I have two daughters. Both of them are in table tennis for the last 5 years. They don't want to carry out tech business anymore. They don't want to join medical or science or the regular profession. My older one wants to be in sports diplomacy. No idea what that is. The second one wants to do sports science. And now these are very viable career alternatives. And we didn't know about them until a few months ago, so we started doing the research. So I think it's important that parents need to be aware that it's not just being a player. Well, that's also important. There are other related things that girls or sports athletes can do. And I just wanted your opinion on that. Thank you.
Oh, physiotherapy is one of them. Actually, my last question, but I've been asking too many, so I dropped that, was about education and jobs. One of the other reasons, one of the other problems in our society is that the moment you get into the workforce, you're expected to work 12 hours a day, 6 hours a week, because 6 days a week, because someone else somewhere must sleep well, and so we must work through the night. So it takes away a lot of people. When they enter the workforce, they stop playing amateur sport, and when they get into 10th standard, they stop playing competitive sport. Gopi, you want to take that?
Well, I think when I truly started playing sport and taking it as a career when I got a job. I think that was the day when we decided that for the rest of my life I have playing sport as my career. But true, when we had say 20 people playing, there were 10 jobs, and 10 people had to find their own way with other jobs. But today, with the number of people playing sport increase, the number of jobs in sport or the champions who are produced in sport is not improving. And since there's a 99% likely chance that you won't make it as a champion, that's the reality of sport. And we don't have a safety net around the sports persons who are out of sport. That's also a reality. We don't have our education system mature enough, and this is where I come back to what Sanya had said regarding the culture of sport and a maturity of a sporting ecosystem. It's not about all people winning. We will not have all people winning. It is not possible. We have to have a system, and this is where entrepreneurs, if you look at, I would really want global sport to be taken out of the picture. It is not global. Sport is local. When you look at the newspaper front page, you will see all local news. What KCR did, what KTR did, or when you turn back, suddenly you see EPL coming. Where transfer fees of EPL, where does that come into the picture? So we have all sport, first page is all local, and last page is all global. It doesn't work. Sport is primarily local. And we need to spend and celebrate our local heroes and make sport viable for community champions, district champions, state champions, and we need to celebrate them. And the other thing around sport is sports diplomacy, sports administration, sports science, commentators, physiotherapists.
Thank you.
All of these needs to be in the business, sports entrepreneurs. All of them need to be kind of looked at, and we need to celebrate sport by itself, not champions per se. And somewhere entrepreneurs here, someday we need to find a way in which sport is looked beyond winning. Everybody who plays sport, if there is an app which can measure the happiness quotient which they win, if there's an app which celebrates and tells us the health benefits which they get, an app which tells them what character building helps by sport, if those are elements which can be measurable, then everybody who plays sport is a champion. And that day, that is the day which I would really want to see. And I'm against, in a way, global sport. Because if global sport was everything, then I don't think we in our country can ever run 100 meters. Because only Western Africa's one particular group of DNA has won 100 meters ever. And all of Eastern Africa from Kenya is all won long distance and marathons. So we should never. But there is a definite 100% reason why sport needs to be played, and it is beyond winning. And that is what we need to focus on, and that is where I think I would really love entrepreneurs to put their heads on to see what sport does.
The other thing you should probably tell them is something I experienced when I was in college. Luckily, I grew up in a city that had 36 hours in a day. Mumbai seems to have about 3 hours in a day. Hyderabad had about 36 hours in a day. And I discovered there's many, many more hours. You can play sport 3 hours a day and study 3 hours a day and sleep 8 hours a day, and there's still enough hours left to read a book. But one of the biggest dangers to sport that's coming up at the moment is what is taking development everywhere, and that's your cell phone. So you take away the cell phone for a while, there's time for everything. And I think what Gopi said is absolutely right. I was a fringe sports person. I played school, college, university, and that was it. But I learned to win and lose. I've cried in a dressing room because we lost an inter-college final, and I've gone, how did that ball go to the boundary? You're not supposed to, and do a little jig because I was 8 not out. So I think everybody should play sport. And then if you can become a career, great. Otherwise, you still become a better human being.
Hello?
You know what you need to do? You need to grab a mic, because whoever's got the mic speaks louder. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tanvir. I'm from Bangladesh. So the questions for the panel in general, but perhaps Mr. Sithiok would be the best person to answer. Is there a way to address the pyramid structure in individual sports? Like, say, if you have a team sport, say football or basketball, you'd have a person who's been in a team for 5 years, probably very less playing minutes, but once he or she retires, he might be financially well off to, like, say, buy a house and maybe live reasonably comfortably. Doesn't have to be a champion. But if you look at, say, boxing, MMA, tennis, badminton, no one knows the number 2 guy, which reflects on the finances, and which means every time an athlete, or no matter how talented he or she is, he's always thinking, okay, I need to pay my bill, or what I'm going to do after retirement. So I'm not saying that the number 2 or 3 guys everyone has to be a multi-millionaire or something, but like at least so that a safety net is ensured. So can that be addressed in any way or something? Thank you.
I appreciate those ideals, but the reality is, if you look at any industry, any job, if you suck, you're not going to get paid. If you're the best at your job, you can get paid, right? So why shouldn't that be for sports? If you're genuinely the #1, the best tennis player in the world, like Serena Williams, you should get paid better than everyone else. Who cares about the number 2, number 3, number 4 if you're not the best in your? I'm just saying, like, there's a gradient. There's a gradient that's natural. So you know, it's the same for any company. If you work for Airtel, or if you work for, you know, any other company, that's, you know, the CEO is going to make more than the junior intern, right? So I mean, the whole concept of safety net, I don't subscribe to. That's a socialist mentality. I think that you know, for whatever it is, I mean, it goes back to our caveman era, you know, Darwinian theory of nature. That's, you know.
Hey, Harsha, hi. Hey, this is Sam, and I work for Dell.
Yeah,
Just
Sam,
a quick
give me
question.
literally a second. I think it's also a little cultural, because in our middle class mindset, we always look for safety nets, And it's interesting because there's a lot of entrepreneurs in this room. We had a batch reunion some years ago, and some of the young graduates asked the successful entrepreneurs, didn't you have a safety net? And the truth is that they said the safety net, if it is within reach, is something you will go to all the time. And so the greatest entrepreneurs are those who don't have a safety net. But I think with athletes, it's a separate issue because we have to keep our local reality in mind too. Yeah.
Hi. So not an entrepreneur yet. I work for Dell.
I like the way you said yet, not yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been saying that for 15 years though. Very quick question. I know you touched upon the point of political people running sports. I have a similar view when I look at entrepreneurs creating businesses related to sport. I see that many entrepreneurs who are doing stuff in the sports arena are some way have been connected with sports. Do you see that's a disadvantage of some kind? Because then maybe they're not innovating, they're just building stuff that they're seeing around. Unlike many other industries where people who have nothing to do with the industry suddenly jump upon it and try to use IT, technology, innovation to create stuff. Versus what happens in sports is like a bowling machine. Someone saw someone's hands aching forever.
And I don't know if that's good or bad, but so you'll find the head of Microsoft is a cricket nerd. You'll find the head of Google is a cricket nerd. Anybody who's ever breathed the air in this country is a cricket nerd. We need to change that very quickly. Her father played cricket as well, but he did well. He produced a tennis player, so that's all right.
That's the balance he found, though.
But I think if you've got interest in a sport and you've played a little bit of that sport, then you start thinking more along those lines, saying, can I do something different within the sport as well? So I don't think playing a sport comes in the way of trying to innovate within the sport, because if you were very good at sport, you would have become a champion at it. Because you're not good at sport, now you want to push your energy somewhere. But I don't know, anyone else wants to ask that question, whether you can get the best ideas from outside the ecosystem?
I mean, I think to be a sports entrepreneur, you first and foremost have to have love. I mean, I've done martial arts for 30 years. It's my greatest passion in life. I train every single day to this day. I love it. That's why I'm doing it. It's not because I'm doing it for money or anything. If you get anyone else to come in to do a sport as an entrepreneur who is coming for the money perspective, I think it'll ruin it. It'll ruin it. So I think there's a beauty in the fact that everyone here are sports people, and that in the future, if they do contribute to sports, there's many ways to contribute to a sport other than just being an athlete. So for me, I think it's paramount.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For being here today on behalf of the United States State Department and the U.S. Government of India. We appreciate all of your time and questions. This session has ended.